About 20 years ago, when I was working right out of college, I told everyone I was going to the seminary, but at this point, early on in working, I was struggling with the vocation of whether or not I should be a priest. And so I remember distinctly one night actually pounding my fists on my bed and saying, "Jesus, I need to know that you're real and that you're here." And almost immediately, I experienced a vision of very similar to today's gospel. I was on a mountaintop, and Jesus was also on a mountaintop, but he was pretty far away. And he was talking with two people, and I now know that they were probably Moses and Elijah, but they were really far away. But then at one point, Jesus turned to me during this vision, and a light came out of him and pierced through my heart. And almost immediately I was just struck with bliss and peace and happiness. And it lasted about a day, right? So I was actually, after that vision, I got up and was walking around my house singing songs and hymns, and I think my parents and family thought I had gone crazy, actually. But as I lay down that night, the vision started to fade, but even then, the effects lingered for about a week. But then they finally went away. So then that kind of, I tried to then recreate their situation. I would pound my bed again and say, "Jesus, I need to know that you're real," but nothing would happen. I would try to, again, recreate all of these things, but then once it didn't work, then I went into about a 2-year, kind of not like a severe depression, but just kind of a spiritual depression, thinking, what did I do wrong? Why did the vision stop? Why did the bliss stop? And so again, I was kind of worried about that. So I get to the St. Meyer Seminary, and pretty early on, I bought in the bookstore the two main books from St. John of the Cross. I'd known that St. John Paul II had a great devotion to St. John of the Cross, so I thought, well, I want to be like St. John Paul II, so I'll start reading St. John of the Cross. Almost immediately, I was given great insight by St. John of the Cross, right? So one of the things that St. John of the Cross says is that we should not seek out spiritual visions. So that already is like an instant relief to me. Why does he say that? There's a couple of different reasons that he says that. First of all, he says that one of the reasons is that we will try to recreate them. Guilty. But I was actually relieved to read that from him. Another reason that St. John of the Cross says that we shouldn't seek out spiritual visions and consolations is that the devil can, in some ways, masquerade as and give us these spiritual visions as well. So that is another reason that we shouldn't seek them out. And another reason that we shouldn't seek them out is that, again, a lot of times we're trying to manufacture these spiritual highs, right? I think a lot of us in the Catholic Church, and certainly a lot of our non-Catholic Christian brothers and sisters, most of their worship service on Sunday is based on creating an emotional feeling. But again, St. John of the Cross says it's deeper than that. It's deeper than that. It's not about our spiritual feelings. It's about a deeper peace. We see again Peter in this ecstasy in the gospel today wanting to stay there, right? He wants to stay on the mountaintop. He actually says and proposes in his ecstasy, "Lord, it's good for us to be here. Let me build 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He wants to stay on the mountain, which is understandable. He's experiencing bliss. Why would you ever want to go back? But Jesus has that vision end, and he has to go back down the mountain. Why? So that he can keep moving forward. If we're in bliss, we don't want to do anything. We want to stay there, right? And so, again, that's another reason why St. John of the Cross says that we shouldn't seek out spiritual visions, because although they're amazingly wonderful and they're what we will be experiencing in heaven, we don't want to move, right? We don't want to do anything moving forward. And then finally, also early on in the seminary, I was also struggling. That was kind of the first time where I was going to daily Mass every single day. So I also remember walking into my spiritual director's office really early on at St. Meyer, and I wasn't planning on it, but I literally burst into tears. I told my spiritual director, I'm going to Mass every day, and I'm not feeling it. I feel I'm receiving the Eucharist, and I want to feel something, and it's not happening. Luckily, St. John of the Cross also has something to say about that, and I'd just like to read this excerpt from him. He says that, quote, in receiving the Eucharist, they spend all their time trying to get some feeling and satisfaction rather than humbly praising and reverencing God dwelling within them. Guilty. He continues, and they go about in such a way that if they do not procure any sensible feeling and satisfaction, they think that they have accomplished nothing. What I now know is that what we experience in this and every Mass is deeper than the superficial, the consolations that we all are probably seeking on some level. What we experience at this and every single Mass is a deep and abiding peace. We trust and know that God is here, even if we aren't overwhelmed with these sensible experiences. Like St. Peter says in today's Gospel, at this and every single Mass ever offered, it is good for us to be here.